And I'm sorry. Oh, one thing I want to emphasize is even though we're going to be looking at some big projects, do not think that a performance task cannot be conducted within one class session. Some of the performance tasks, which we're going to be looking at today, might seem grand, they might seem big, but when you have a student be able to take something, dissect it, and be able to show an authentic illustration of their understanding, knowledge, and what they can do with that, that is considered a performance task. So please don't think that any of these examples, though they might be big, couldn't be reduced into a one-time class period. Okay, the first one we're going to look at is historical reenactments, and on this screen you'll see a wonderful quote from Nathaniel, who's a student reflecting on his reenactment experience. And we're all different types of learners, and we all learn differently. I personally dislike the written test. I much prefer project-based learning to be assessed, and some of us are outgoing and charismatic, and they
I
want to
recorded
breathe
all
life
those
into
webinars this
history.
weekend, but
So that's perfect
some
for our
moron was
kinesthetic
sniffling all the way through
learners.
the recording,
So
so
historical
it didn't come out very
reenactments,
well.
what we want to emphasize here
Yeah.
are not just recitals or regurgitations of historical events. They're more reflecting of an analysis and an authentic understanding. So an example would be, instead of having a student become Abraham Lincoln and recite the Gettysburg Address, what would be a wonderful skit or historical reenactment would be for students to possibly put themselves in a hospital during the Civil War, and they're one of the wounded soldiers who are discussing with other soldiers what occurred during the Gettysburg battle, and talking about how the president is handling it and being able to show that critical thinking. And so we don't want just recitation. We want to actually see that authentic understanding, that the student now has actually obtained your goal of the generalization and is able to demonstrate that through this performance task. At this time, I think we're ready to try to look at a sample performance task, and hopefully we can get this to play.
Go to our wiki and view performance test video 1. We're going to be coming back at timestamp 5:29 on the video. We apologize for the issue here, but unfortunately sometimes with this particular service the videos don't work properly, but we just appreciate these videos so much. We believe it's important for you to see them. So if you would please, while we play them, please feel free to go to the wiki and do them for yourself.
Okay, so what we'd like you to do at this time is provide us with some of your thoughts on that clip. What did you see students demonstrating? What did you see that they learned? What were some of the concepts present, or show that students really understood the historic context? This is where you get to participate. We really would appreciate it.
Just type your responses in the discussion box, the chat box, and, or in the question box if you can't find that, and we can share them out.
Wonderful. Adam said definitely the concept of leadership. Now, these are also issues in which are only historically significant, but can make that current event connection of today and make learning relevant. Answer the so what to instruction. Okay, now look, you saw the finished product. What the learning experiences are that we've discussed. Oh, public speaking too. I'm sorry. Yeah, excellent. And that's the Common Core connection as well. I'm sorry, did I miss any other feedback? Thank you, Anne. Is there any feel free to continue to answer though and provide more input. But what we were saying is learning experiences. You saw that finished product. Now, as educators, we all know that that didn't just happen easily. There was a lot of promoting that was done by the teacher in order to accomplish that role play and historical reenactment. So what do you think are some learning experiences, and these are actually the activities or the skills that needed to be done in the classroom prior?
Claire, thinking about that, Ann Joyner also pointed out student through research, the ability to find appropriate quotes and use them in context, which is certainly a key thing. And tying that too to connecting to current events, as you see, for example, recent scandals involving leadership in government and homosexuality and so on. So making those connections there.
In addition, that's a learning skill to be able to use those. That's a learning experience to be able to use those appropriate quotes in context and add them dead on with the research. How do we research and be able to take multiple perspectives? Not only are you meeting these standards in social studies, but you're also meeting the Common Core, and definitely wonderful Julie as far as research and script writing. And I think one thing that you're going to see as we go through these more is all the interdisciplinary opportunities. And as we meet in our PLCs, the opportunity to say, hey, I need a costume for this play, and the home ec teacher, or I'm sorry, the teacher being able to say, okay, we can help with this, or the art teacher, or the woodshop teacher, or the ELA teacher, or the science teacher. It brings in all the disciplines, and often a project that's being done for National History Day can also be entered in the science fair, and you get one project, do it well, and it meets multiple discipline requirements, and it goes hand in hand with that less deeper type of concept. Being able to ask the questions that you want to guide your excellence, that is wonderful. And I think we talk about that a little bit later, is that when the student has the right question to guide that inquiry, that's what makes for a wonderful project. And just since Julie, you're so dead on with that, just to comment on that now, when a student is doing a project, it shouldn't just be a reflection. It shouldn't just be a book report. It shouldn't just be a report on the Civil War. It should be a question that they want to answer. Some great questions that I remember my students had created was, does a flapper need to degrade herself in order to liberate herself? It's clearly not a question in which the student had the answer to, but it was the question that guided her research and the lens through which she looked at her research. And it's something that the student wants to answer, and we have to allow for that flexibility for the research to actually guide them. Your answers have been dynamite. Okay, so we're moving on to look at the rubric. Now, I know Steve is going to reiterate this time and time again, but we just want to say that this whole process should begin with this rubric in the student's hands. It relays clear expectations as to what's expected of them. This rubric specifically is an example. Please in no way feel that you need to use this. If anything, we have it in Word document so that you can customize it specifically to your needs. This was just a foundation or a baseline to springboard from. For instance, I right off the bat would change content and accuracy to be a little bit more of a historical emphasis depending on what I was going to be doing. One example, I had a group of students who I remember lost points because at the end of an American Revolution presentation, they sang the Star Spangled Banner. Well, at that time, the Star Spangled Banner hadn't been written yet. So due to the fact that it was historically inaccurate and not aligned, they lost some points on that, so I might include that here on this performance skit. In terms of timing, you might want to provide your students 3 minutes in order to set up, 10 minutes tops, and 3 minutes to sit down, or to pull props down, or maybe a minimum requirement of time as well. So this is just a rubric to get us started with performance skits. So hopefully you will find that helpful. Oh, absolutely. And Steve is going to show you at the end of this exactly where to find everything on our wiki so that you can go and use them and customize them for your classroom. And just to emphasize again, we want to facilitate student success. And by providing the rubric at the onset, then everyone's expectations are crystal clear, and that will assist student success on performance tasks. All right, next we're going to look at exhibits. This is my second favorite. And the quotes that are here are from the Smithsonian. And this first one's great because it basically addresses how there's so many standards. And I think this expresses a lot of teachers today feeling overwhelmed by all the standards. And project-based learning, performance tasks, creation of exhibits is a wonderful way of tying these standards together. It intrigues students, and it actually makes them want to learn. A lot of times kids will become turned on when they have the opportunity to create a mini museum exhibit. And I think one of the best parts is that it's an assessment that can begin at the onset of learning. It's something that's progressive and moves through. A lot of times it can be a vehicle and a teaching strategy as opposed to an add-on when we do it right. So they progress and are able to reinforce their newly obtained knowledge through being able to analyze it and present it in an exhibit. So it's the perfect opportunity to assist in developing 21st century skills further, in which they can literally demonstrate what they learn. And it's something that is so encouraging when you can actually see students be able to speak to it. But it's even better when the exhibit can stand on its own and resemble that of a mini museum exhibit, and they're able to use the color and organization and planning that goes into a clear exhibit. If you have used exhibits, please, this is a good time. Tell us about it. Are you using exhibits? Do you love it? Do you have challenges with it? Please share your thoughts in the question box. I'm sorry that I was just assuming that. This is just an opportunity while possibly some people are typing that I would just like to say, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term Crayola curriculum, and that's one thing we want to make sure that we differentiate from here. A lot of times, like, just creating a pyramid is not what we're looking for in terms of an exhibit. And some of the exhibits that we look at here have components, and the rubric will also additionally help guide us to ensure that this is not what people reference as Crayola curriculum. This shows the authentic depth of understanding, new knowledge, and skills. Okay, I'm not seeing any feedback with regard to using exhibits in the classroom, so we're going to move on to some of our samples. This is a phenomenal website that Steve found, and it is linked on our wiki. It starts off with this great blueprint. This is a wonderful way, and I strongly encourage that, and this was something my students had to submit to me before doing a presentation, was this blueprint. And now it doesn't have to be organized like this, but it encourages a thesis. Something I would add to this blueprint is a conclusion, because while there's a thesis, there's going to be research that either proves or disproves that thesis, and including that conclusion really will help tie the presentation with a bow. I had a wonderful exhibit that my student did on the pros and cons of the Udon rat, and her conclusion fell in the center. So on the left side was the pros, the right side is the cons, and the center is her conclusion. There's various ways in which you can organize this, but the thought of that being, do you plan it? Do you expect it to stand on its own? And do you try to, it shouldn't just be a haphazard posting of pictures with captions. We want it to have a sequential order. So we're going to look at 3 examples quickly. This first one has, if we can see in the middle, that's all the annotated bibliography. So that's your written component right there. Every caption, there's no caption that is not accompanied, and no visual that is not accompanied by an illustration. And there is a primary source document included. Now, while this might look like there's not a lot, that's another skill here, is to determine what's important. Which, in this digital age, we have so much information at our disposal. To be able to judge the important documents, the important resources, and then include them is another skill that we hope to teach students in this specific exhibit. I just saw, I'm sorry, I see a question. I love the idea of a peer-to-peer feedback being done through a VoiceThread, Julie. That is a phenomenal idea, and I just wanted to repeat it to ensure that everyone was able to share in that wonderful idea. Okay, we're gonna, oh, by the way, that specifically was a K-5. I'm not sure exactly which grade, but that was a K-5. The next one we're looking at is a middle school exhibit. One thing that I specifically loved about this one is if you look closely to the left, you'll see triumph. If you look closely to the middle of the board on the right, you'll see tragedy. This is triumph and tragedy throughout history was the theme. There always are themes incorporated in this, which facilitates conceptual instruction beautifully. Also, you'll see cause and effect, which whenever you see a standard that says, understand, explain, we want to see that cause and effect model. It's aligning to Bloom. So this, again, is a perfect illustration of teaching to the essential standards. And that was a middle school exhibit. And the last one we're going to look at is a senior exhibit. And I've often been surprised how even middle school and elementary can really outshine high school exhibits at times. But this is, and I point that out only to say that all 3 were in a very high caliber. I really wanted to, I love the color use on this one, because if you pay attention to the matting, now what I would have recommended was a little bit more visuals, but if you pay attention to the matting, the backing of each of the captions, you'll see the color organization. It walks my eye through the board. The dates that are included also walk my eye through the board. I always tell a student never use anything smaller than a 20-point font, because that's pretty much something that is friendly for the viewer. And I really also love the fact that they give the history, the debate, and then the conclusion. And it tells a whole story. So that is it for the sample exhibits. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, okay, absolutely. I'm sorry. I do want to just bring a point to these unbelievable creative. It's amazing what students can do. And these are National History Day competitions, so they were all given a size requirement, which is a very strict size requirement. And as long as you work within that size requirement, you can build anything. I've seen a Campbell's soup can that was unbelievable. This is an actual space shuttle, in which once I saw a piano. It was a newly constructed piano in which you opened it up and the display was in there. So, give that flexibility and freedom and let students meet and exceed those expectations and showing you what they can do. And it really creates a wonderful, healthy competition among students too, because they see something that a peer does and I could do this next time. And it's just that contagious, healthy type of achievement that they in creating this. I know Steve shared with us, he had a great idea and that he did a museum day. And then he was actually able to take younger students and the older students served as docents during the museum day and they walked them through. How authentic. The students will remember that learning for the rest of their lives. And they got to teach younger students as well. Okay. Here is our rubric of a board and exhibit, and I just want to reiterate again, it's a little hard to see right here, but we do have it on our wiki for your use and adjusting and customizing to your needs, but this just gives us a good foundation. What are, and I didn't poll the audience as to the grade levels of expertise, but what would be some modifications that you would make in various grade levels? Specifically K to 3. We're going to just take a minute to think, process, and be able to share some modifications that might be suitable for especially younger grades. Okay, this is wonderful by Ann Joyner. Students might have a scribe, a parent, or older sibling write for them. Phenomenal, Ann. Thank you. Julie, you said you're not sure you'd use this. Absolutely up to your discretion. We want to expose a ton of tools to you, and then you pick what works for you. Some teachers give every one of these is a choice. Some teachers, and different years I did different things, honestly. Some years I said, everyone's doing a research paper, everyone's doing a documentary. I would like to hear why you think you wouldn't use it, though, if you want to share that with us. Okay, so you're going to do the, Julie, I'm just reiterating that you'd use the electronic. You'd do a digital presentation, which Steve is going to walk us through soon. And you could do a virtual exhibit digitally. And I know a first grade class, oh wow, I would love you to share that with us, Julie. I'm sure it would be absolutely successful. I'm inspired by that. Thank you for sharing it. Okay, please feel free to continue to participate and write in. We will pause and share with you other feedback that is sent in at this, and pretty much one other thing I just wanted to say before we moved on was include primary sources. This is a great opportunity in all areas to get students using those primary sources, and that's where I fell in love with history, when I was actually able to put on the gloves and get deep into the archive. So try to teach students how to even recreate it with the use of coffee and tea and staining paper and so forth. Okay, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and he's going to talk about extended writing.
All right. Well, after I don't know how much I can follow Ann on those two brilliant examples, but we're going to talk now a little bit about extended writing.